Today I'm going to show you guys how to build what I consider to be the best DIY vocal booth.
True Sound Studios is in your ears.
Hey guys, what is up? It is Weezna. As always, we are here at my studio, True Sound Studios, and today I'm going to show you guys how to build vocal booth number 3 and what I consider to be the best DIY vocal booth that you can build. So the reason I think this is the best vocal booth that you can build is just mainly because of how it sounds when you record vocals. This vocal booth is essentially built with acoustic panels. So as we all know, in the recording and mixing world, having acoustic treatment and acoustic panels and acoustic diffusion is really the best way to be able to treat whatever space we're working in. So not only does this vocal booth take care of the wall reflections, we're also going to build a triangular acoustic panel to put on top of our vocal booth to catch some of the reflections that happen off the ceiling. All right guys, so let's go build this vocal booth. Okay, so for tools, you're gonna need a drill, a whole bunch of wood screws. You're going to need a utility knife, some sort of pen or pencil to mark the wood. You're going to need scissors to cut the fabric. You're going to need a tape measure and a staple gun. And then last, you're just going to need something to cut the wood with. For materials, you're going to need 8 1-inch by 4-inch by 8-foot long pine boards. Now I got all 8 of these boards for just about $20. You're also going to need a roll of R13 faced fiberglass insulation, and faced means that it has the paper on the back side of the insulation, and this is so that you have something to staple to essentially mount it to the wood. And the last 2 things you will need is you will need 2 hinges. Now I bought these door hinges for about $2 each. And the last thing you will need is a whole bunch of black fabric. Now you can go ahead and go to a fabric supply store, but what I often do is just go to Walmart or Target and buy their cheapest queen or king size flat sheets and use them as fabric because it actually turns out to be a little cheaper. So you can make the vocal booth height whatever you want. I'm gonna make mine 7 feet high. I just wanna make sure that any one of my clients or my friends doesn't hit their head on the top of the vocal booth, because we're actually going to be building an acoustic panel that fits on top of the booth, and this panel is going to catch the reflections that come from the ceiling. So obviously just measure the space that you're gonna be putting this vocal booth in, and just make sure that you're building the vocal booth, shorter than the ceiling height in your room. Okay, so I went ahead and cut some wood. So I cut 4 pieces at 80 inches, and I cut another 4 pieces at 30 inches. Okay, so the 80-inch pieces are gonna be the height of the walls of our vocal booth, and the shorter pieces, the 30-inch pieces, are gonna be the width of our vocal booth. Now the reason for making them 30 inches is because insulation is actually 15 inches wide. So you want to make these in multiples of 15 so that, first of all, you don't have to cut insulation the width-wise, which is sometimes really tricky to do. And then secondly, you want to have as much stapling space on the insulation as possible, because if you don't staple this enough and the insulation moves around a little bit, there's a chance that it could fall off because the back of the insulation is only made out of paper. Also, I had said I'm going to make the vocal booth 7 feet tall, but I only cut the pieces of wood at 80 inches, which is 4 inches short. And the reason for that is that the vocal booth is actually going to have an acoustic panel at the top of it, like I was talking about, and this wood is 3.5 inches high, and I just left an extra 1/2 inch for the fabric, but this is gonna fit on top, and that will give us our 7-foot height. Okay, so now it is time to screw these together. The longer pieces are gonna be on the outside of it, and the shorter pieces will be inside. So essentially I'm gonna be screwing through the longer piece into the shorter piece. So what you can do is you can use a square, and this way you can make sure that you're screwing these together and forming a 90-degree angle. Okay, so what I did is 5 feet from the top is where the bottom of the acoustic panel is gonna stop. And essentially there's just gonna be nothing here. And the reason for that is we don't really need to have acoustic treatment down here. you know, we need to worry about where your voice is, which is going to be somewhere in the middle towards the top of this vocal booth. So you obviously can continue your acoustic panel all the way down to the floor, but it's really not necessary. Okay, so I put together both of the vocal booth walls, and they're essentially going to be like this, obviously not laying down, but it's going to be more like this. So we're going to make a right angle out of these two walls of our vocal booth. Okay, so I laid both of the walls of the vocal booth down on the ground, and I'm going to take the insulation and I'm going to fit it in between the upper sections of these walls. I'm going to lay all the insulation down with the paper on the top, and I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way around it and staple the paper of the insulation into the wood. All right, let's do this. Okay, so I am super allergic to insulation, so that's why I got all this gear on. Okay, so now that the insulation is in, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip these over so that the paper is now on the ground and the insulation will now be exposed. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the black fabric, lay it over the top, stretch it over the sides, and staple it in. Okay, so here you go. These are both of the finished walls of our vocal booth. As you can see, like I said, there's no acoustic insulation at the bottom. It's really just to get these panels up higher. And all the way up top there is 80 inches to the very top of them. And what I'm gonna do is, so now that both of these panels are pushed together, we've created essentially almost a 90-degree angle. You can choose your own angle of your vocal booth if you want it to be a little wider or a little narrower, but so this is the walls of the vocal booth finished. Okay, so to join the two acoustic panel walls together, I'm just going to use these door hinges that we got, and I'm going to place them here. I measured 12 inches from the bottom of the panel, and then the other one is going to go 12 inches from the top, and I'm going to screw them in, and essentially this is just going to let us be able to collapse and fold the whole vocal booth up just in case you wanted to take it down. But really all this is doing is just joining our two panels together so that they don't fall over. Okay, so this is from the back side of it. You can see there's one hinge, and towards the bottom, the second hinge. Okay, so now we're gonna build the acoustic panel that's gonna sit on top of our vocal booth. So all I'm gonna do is measure from this top corner to that top corner, and we know that this is 30 inches long and that's 30 inches long, and I'm gonna go ahead and build the acoustic panel just a little bit bigger so that it sits on top of the vocal booth walls. Okay, so this is what the top acoustic panel looks like. The long measurement is 47.5. This side was 32, and the other side was 31.25, and that's because the piece of wood just overlaps. And the only reason I had to make the one piece shorter is just because of how it's screwed together. It adds up another 3/4 of an inch because of the thickness of the wood. Okay, so there we go. This is the acoustic panel that's gonna go on top of the vocal booth. So here you go. This is what it looks like from the ground up. As you can see at the top there, that's why I put that acoustic panel that I just put in. And this is our entire vocal booth So we're gonna do a really quick unofficial test with this. On top of this camera is a Rode VideoMic Pro. It is a $200 microphone. It actually sounds really good. Now, if you don't know, Rode actually makes some pretty good vocal microphones anyways. So obviously right now I'm talking, the vocal booth is not in front of me. So now let me go stand in front of the vocal booth. So now we are inside the vocal booth. We have the walls on either side, including the acoustic panel on the ceiling that's stopping some of the reflections happening that are coming from the ceiling. And if you want to improve this even further, another thing you can do is put some sort of carpet or blanket down on the floor to stop the reflections off the floor. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this build. Now from start to finish, the total cost was about $68, including the fabric, the screws, the wood, the insulation. So I think for, roughly $70, depending on, where you get your materials from, I think that's a pretty darn good price for having your own, what looks like a very professional vocal booth. And not only does it look good, but obviously it's gotta sound good. All right, guys, thanks for watching this video. And as always, if you have any questions about how I built this or maybe some really specific details on this build, please go ahead and leave a comment in the comments section underneath this video. All right, now go out and build your own vocal booth and make some better sounding recordings. So if you guys like this video, consider subscribing and hit that like button. Follow us on Instagram for daily posts. You can find the beats that I make right here at the studio on our SoundCloud page. True Sound Studios also mixes and masters your tracks. So once again, guys, thanks for watching this video. I'm Weezna, we're at True Sound Studios, and True Sound Studios is in your ears.